Let's talk about cigar whiskeys, and not just pairing a cigar with whiskey, but whiskeys designed to stand up to cigars. This bottle here is this year's special release from Kurt from the Gentleman's Flavor. Now, I had a bottle of his release last year. I think it was called the Sunshine Claro. And truthfully, I drank it before I could review it, so I promised myself I wouldn't do that again. So here we are. Cigar whiskeys, I think too often fail because they rely on usual techniques, but simply overdoing it. Overly aggressive char or smoke, too much of a sherry bomb. They seem to try to overemphasize their flavors in order to stand up to cigar smoke instead of balancing against it. And the result, in my opinion, is a whiskey that either clobbers the palate or overpowers a gentler cigar. True cigar whiskeys need presence. Body that can meet a full-bodied cigar, complexity that evolves over the course of a smoke, and a flavor profile that actually complements tobacco's earth, leather, spice, and sweetness. One tension with cigar malts is whether they play off the tobacco or balance against it with a sweetness. And a lot of them are just broad, meant for any cigar. They're not specific, light cigars, heavy cigars. And if you decide to lean into a tobacco, like this bottle does here, the challenge is clear. How do you truly integrate tobacco character into whiskey without it tasting gimmicky or overpowered? Today I have the Gentleman's Flavor Campfire Oscuro, a whiskey that doesn't just say it's for cigar lovers, it built itself around that idea. The base is a blend of two different bourbon-style whiskeys, a rye and a single malt whiskey, but what sets it apart, I think, is how it was finished. First, Oscuro means dark, and was created to be paired specifically with a full-bodied cigar. Oscuro Cigars, for those who aren't cigar smokers, these cigars use wrappers that are fermented for quite a long time, often quite dark, oily, and full-bodied in flavor. So, instead of a simple barrel finish, what they did here was they used Lagavulin 16 casks for a few months. I think it was 2. The barrels, of course, imparting that smoky Isla whiskey. And then they ran it through their own very take on the Lincoln County process, which they call the Pioneer County process. But in a way, I think that's almost completely unheard of. So first, the traditional Lincoln County process is a charcoal filtration step used in a lot of Tennessee whiskeys, or used in Tennessee whiskey. I've talked about this before, which I'll put a link up above. It's whiskey sort of trickling through maple charcoal, but that's not what's happening here. Instead, the team deconstructed the Lagavulin casks, they recharred the staves, and then they smoked those staves in heavily fermented Nicaraguan tobacco. The whiskey was then gravity filtered through that newly torched wood, effectively absorbing both wood-derived flavors and a direct tobacco influence. It's not just a peated cask finish, it's a hybrid concept mirroring the smoke, the caramelized char, the tobacco, and that blended whiskey in what I think is a pretty unique way. And to my knowledge, this specific approach, smoking barrel staves with fermented tobacco and using them as a finishing medium, isn't something you see in wider whiskey production. In fact, I don't think I know of a single one. If you do, definitely let me know. I've seen some folks burn tobacco inside a cask, but not this. And peated cask finishes, of course, they're all over the place. But tobacco smoked staves as a flavor vector, for me, it's new and novel. And for that reason alone, I'm eager to give it a try. You can see I've already had a couple thoughts. So let's get into it. We're looking at 48.9% here. So let's give it a pour. All right. So the nose is nice, but it's not overpowering, and it's definitely not too smoky. You do get a very faint, subtle sweet smoke. I don't think I'm getting any peat on the nose though. It's definitely rich. It's layered, quite sweet, sort of baked fruits, dark red fruits. And there's a nice texture to it. You can see it sort of clings to the glass, but not overly oily. Anyways, cheers. So the palate, definitely denser than the nose. I get a nice malt sweetness there. That campfire smoke is definitely here. Maybe even more subtle than it was on the nose. A nice earthy grain. A sort of bitter dark chocolate. A little bit of leather. The faintest bit of peat. I really don't get much peat here. It is there, but really faint. Don't add ice or water. It feels thoughtful and complex. I think the finish is where it wins me over. Yeah, at 48.9%, it drinks light. That finish has a nice, long, lingering, soft, sweet smoke. My only hesitation on this, I was expecting more from the Lagavulin cask, more peat. But it's really nice. I do love the length that Kurt went to making this one. His thoughtful cask finish and that playful pioneer county process by Okanagan Spirits. A lot of fun. It's definitely complex and layered. He partnered. Sorry, I should have mentioned this before. He partnered with Okanagan Spirits to make this, and I think they stepped up to the plate in a big way. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is actually their first foray into aging in peated casks, or at least their first release. Maybe they have something else. But this is a minimum of a 9-year blend. You know, they're single malt, they're rye, and 2 of their bourbon-style whiskies. It's robust, it's complex. I don't smoke a lot of cigars. I do have a few, but instead of coming up with my own suggestion, I just went ahead and asked the expert himself, Kurt. He recommended pairing this, of course, with a bold Oscuro cigar. And as a reminder, those are cigar wrappers that are fermented for a long time. They're dark, they're oily, they're full-bodied. If you're in Canada and you like a fine cigar and good whiskey, don't miss out on this one. I love what Kurt and Okanagan Spirits are doing here. They've got 3 cigar whiskeys, each of them so far selling out pretty fast, and each one for a different style of cigar. The Sunshine Claro was for a lighter wine. This is for a bold Oscuro cigar. What do you think? What's your favorite cigar whiskey? I think a lot of cigar whiskeys are also sort of that across the board type cigar whiskey. Oh, it's a cigar whiskey. You can drink it with any cigar. Kurt here is getting a bit more nuanced, which I absolutely love. Let me know. What do you think? Thanks for watching. See you soon.